Have you ever wondered why so many gay men live in the big city? Have you ever thought about the fact that so many gay men live in big cities and wondered why? Well, in this video today, I'm going to be talking about some of the benefits of urban gay life. I'm hoping that by sharing some of my thoughts on this topic, you'll be able to have a better perspective about what type of environment you might like to live in. Because living in a city isn't for everyone. In a recent video, linked here, I was talking about how gay men are defaulting to online spaces over in-person spaces far too much these days. Some of you might be thinking, well, we have to do online spaces because there aren't enough in-person spaces. This is one of the big reasons why many gay men end up moving to cities. They feel like if they don't move to cities, there just won't be real in-person interactions available to them. So a little bit about me that you might not know. I grew up in Orange County, California, which is a super suburban environment. So I feel super comfortable talking about the suburban gay life. I also have lived in London for the past 2 years, which is one of the biggest cities in the Western world. With that being said, I feel like I have a pretty balanced perspective on this topic. So without any further ado, here are 5 pros of urban gay life. 1, there are more gay people. More gay people means there are more people to date. There are more potential friends. It's nice just seeing other gay people around. There are just more interactions in a numerical sense for you as a gay person, and it's easier to find other gay people who have similar interests to you versus just settling. 2, people in cities tend to just be more open-minded in general. And I know that's a huge generalization, but especially when it comes to queer issues, it seems that people in big cities are just more used to the fact that gay people exist. This is super nice as a gay person navigating the world because you don't have to be as on edge about coming out all the time. For example, if your coworkers ask you about your partner, instead of feeling the need to cover up the gender of your partner, you might feel more comfortable. I know I certainly have if you're in an urban environment versus when you're in the suburbs. 3, there are more queer cultural events. Whether it's being able to go to a queer museum on a random Thursday afternoon or being invited by your friends to going to see a queer art show on Saturday night, there are just more opportunities in the city to do queer things as a part of your everyday experience. 4, and this is related to the first one, but it's just easier to date in big cities. One of the reasons, of course, is because there are just more of us, but also it's just a safer environment to go on queer dates in general. Plus, and this is a big generalization, I feel like the dating pool in big cities tends to be just a little bit better. Now, this isn't always the case. At least here in London, I feel like instead of closeted people, which is what I would find in the suburbs, I find a lot more out and proud people and people who are more confident in themselves, versus queer people in the suburbs tend to be a little bit more reserved and sometimes are still in the closet completely. The last one is that there are more gay venues. Now, this is actually something that's been going down in recent years. Gay venues in London, for example, have gone down by over 60% in the past decade and a half or so. However, having 5 gay bars in a main district is a lot better than having 0. And I know that most of the cities that I lived in growing up had 0 gay bars. But suburban life does have its charms. Here are 3 reasons why I think being in the suburbs can be a benefit for gay men. 1, and this is kind of a spicy one, it makes monogamy easier. Now, whether or not monogamy is right for you is a completely different video. However, I do think that if you are somebody who wants to be monogamous, it's a lot easier to do that in the suburbs than it is in the city. When you're in the city, there's a lot of temptation. There's a lot more options. Just gay life in the city, going out to bars, parties, new events, meeting new people all the time just leads to more temptation. And if you're someone who really just wants to settle down with one guy, it could be a lot easier to do that in the suburbs. 2, and this is somewhat related, but it's just easier to focus on career in general. If you have the goal of just going to work and advancing up the corporate ladder, I guess suburban life can be really great because there are just fewer distractions. 3 is that queer communities still exist in suburban environments. And you might be the type of person who really appreciates closer knit, smaller communities over bigger, more dispersed communities. And from my experience, the gay friends that I did have in suburbs, although fewer, tended to be more closely knit. I felt like it was kind of an us versus the world situation. Plus, living in the city does have some cons. One is that in the city, you tend to encounter a lot of shallow people, specifically a lot of shallowness in the gay community. While you might know 50 gay people, are you really friends with 50 gay people? More likely than not, you have fleeting friendships that last a month, maybe two, and then just move on to the next. These sort of connections can be really novel and exciting at first, but over time, you long for something deeper. Speaking of longing for something deeper, city life is not great for guys who are looking for someone who wants to settle down. Most of the guys I know in London tend to not be that focused on finding a boyfriend, are more focused on career, or just like being single. Plus, the dating pool is full of people who say that they want a boyfriend, but whose actions don't really add up. It's really easy to get in this cycle of just date after date, move on to the next, date after date, move on to the next. And that's especially true in big cities because there are just more people to go through. The third con of city life, and this might be just kind of more of a me thing, but I find that city life can be very overstimulating. And if you're neurodivergent or just don't really like a lot of noise and lights and all of that, city life can be kind of stressful. Plus, gay life in cities tends to revolve around the nightlife, which means that you have to deal with big crowds, lots of noise, loud music, bright lights, and that just might not be something that you feel really comfortable in anyway. So you pay this big premium for rent in the big city, but you don't really enjoy the nightlife. So if that's the case, it might not make sense to really even move to a big city. However, suburban life isn't perfect either. One of the biggest reasons that I chose to move from the suburbs to a bigger city is this feeling of isolation. It gets really lonely feeling like you're the only one at a job who's gay, or feeling like you don't know if you can be super out with your neighbors for fear of homophobia. I mean, in the city, you barely know your neighbors at all, and that anonymity is really liberating. Plus, in the suburbs, I felt like I was always just longing for more. I knew there was a big world out there, but I felt boxed in behind a white picket fence. The other problem with gay life in the suburbs is that you end up representing queer people to all the straight people that you know because they just don't know that many queer people. And I remember in the suburbs, I would kind of feel this need to portray the gay community in a better light. I remember feeling like if straight people didn't see queer people as perfect, that we wouldn't be deserving of rights. And I know that sounds really messed up. More than just feeling pressure of portraying the gay community as perfect, I remember just kind of tempering myself even. I was afraid to be too gay at any given moment because I didn't really want to be seen by straight people as too much. Here in the big city, I'm not as worried about being too much. If anything, I feel like not enough because there's so many people who are so much more bold and outgoing than I am. It might be another problem that I've walked myself into, but it's a problem I'd prefer to have. I think the fact that suburban people tend to be a bit more conservative is just a drag on queer expression in general. Maybe you are the type of person who doesn't really care what other people think, in which case, disregard this point. But if you're like me, and you do care a little bit about what other people think despite trying your best not to, the suburban life can be a bit of a challenge. It's easy to kind of mold yourself into a more tempered version of yourself so that you're not offending other people and that you feel more safe. In the big city, with more open-minded mindsets and a greater degree of anonymity, you're more free to just be yourself. So I'm going to address the big elephant in the room. I haven't talked about rural environments. And the reason I haven't talked about rural environments is I haven't lived in a rural environment. Now, there is a show on HBO called Somebody Somewhere, and this show does a great job about depicting the lives of queer people in a rural environment. So if you haven't watched it, I do really recommend it. But I also want to know from you, the viewer, especially if you have lived in a rural environment, grew up in it, or currently live in a rural environment, how was that? Drop a comment down below. I'd love to get a better sense about queer life and how it intersects with geography. And if you like this video, you might like some of my other videos, so be sure to take a look at my channel. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support. I am a smaller channel, so if you've taken a chance on clicking on this video, thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!